So this line refers that this text does not work on theoretical, rational, and philosophical matters, but also it deals with, aesthetic practice of Buddhist belief. So in Buddhism, there are a lot of texts which elaborates on the philosophical theory. But the most important thing is the means of practice. Of course, there is no means without any philosophical background. But you should know that no matter how important the philosophical or how good is the philosophical background behind, but you should know that what benefit does a philosophical theory provides. Then there are a lot of cases in which philosophical theory does not provide any beneficial background, but it provides complicated matter of argument. Here in the stages of practice, the essence here in this book is to talk about stages of practice and also it talks about how you should practice your asceticism. And they have divided this text by first, middle part, and the last part, conclusion part, and they talk about it in all diverse ways. So this book talks about stages of practice. Some texts only talk about theory, but this book does not only contain theory. In Western world, if you in science or in Western philosophy, a lot of people through different or diverse theory, they mention how the world is. The world was so, and how did the suffering of mankind disappear? If you ask the question, there is no answer that you can get from them. Even the Western philosophers, although there are so many scholars, amongst what they have suggested, there is no one who talk about means to overcome suffering or agony of humankind. They have not been able to identify what is suffering exactly, and there is no text to support this. So if you read Western philosophy, it provides you a lot of headache and points of argument, but there isn't something that provides you a concrete suggestion. And also this Brahmin, just like Hinduism, they believed in so many different diverse gods. And they have also, in a way, have a suffering and have a conclusion that there is no end to suffering in this humankind. So, with the conclusion that there is no escape from freedom, all the religions that exist now it's all for the life after death. So there's not much relation between the religion and our daily life. So what do you have to do specifically in our daily lives? You do not have a concrete answer, um, except absolute volunteer and absolute devotion to God, because God takes care of all.
불교는 유교 같은 경우도 이를테면 그럼 우리가 사회에서 좀 싸우지 않고 어떻게 살 것인가? 또 사회를 어떻게 좀 평화롭게
But Buddhism, and not only Buddhism, even Confucianism, they also talk about how to live this life without so much argument, and how can we
허무주의에 불과해서
how can we escape ourselves? How can we make ourselves distant from suffering?
살아 있으면서 살아 있는 때 고통을 갖다가 내가 직접 없앨 수 있는 방법을 얘기한 사람은 석가모니밖에 없어요.
So the only person who talk about how to distance yourself from suffering, or how to escape from suffering, is only Buddha. But
여러 사람들이 해보니까 된다 그 말이지. 이제 거기에 보편성을 가졌다.
And also it has we can say it has we can also say the Buddha's way is universal, because there are so many people who have benefited from Buddha's ways.
철학만 얘기했다고 그래서 수행 방법이 그럼 빈곤한 거냐? 그렇지는 않다 그 말. 수행 방법에
Just because there are so many philosophical theories behind Buddha, and but since there are more evidence on the stages of practice or asceticism practice,
완벽한 철학은 철학의 뒷받침이 있어야 되는 것이기 때문에 그럼 이 논전이
some people may argue that since Buddha has only suggested matters to practice, but you should know that there are so many concrete evidences behind his philosophical idea, and that's almost perfect. And also in this Komlimparpa, in stages of practice mid-level, there are still the balance between the philosophy and the matters of practice is very well done. But but in this text, the concentration is done on the practice. If you find in the scriptures, there are some texts which has main topic, and like in 지장경 they talk about cause and effect theory. Although we say Komlimparpa is the best book for the stages of practice or matters to practice, each book has concentration, and that's why we say Komlimparpa or stages of practice is the best text to provide support for their practice. But it does not mean it does not contain any important theories or important aspects of other good virtues of our daily life. So in Korean Buddhism, those who practice asceticism only pays attention to asceticism, that causes problem. So you should not have that kind of judgment. And also some text is helpful for literal theory, but some texts are helpful for actual ascetic practice. This just means you should look at all the texts in a way in a broad outlook, but you should be able to derive what is important from those texts, respectively.
그건 오히려 그 아주 잘못된 견해란 말이에요. 인명론 그 자체가 논리적으로 하나하나 파악을 하는 그 자체가 수행임에도 불구하고 인명론을 보면서 이건 논리학이니까 수행 방법이 아니구만 그러고 때려치우는 단견을 갖다 가진 사람들이 있단 말이에요.
So if you look at texts that describe about human life, you should not make judgments, or you should not and come up with judgments that since they talk about human life, they don't talk about ascetic practice. That is a wrong idea. Like a Noble Path or The Way to Bodhisattva, all these books, the main idea of those books are the ways to practice your asceticism. Like if you're learning maths, you should not expect Korean from that. But even when you are learning, but even when you are learning maths, the formulas or the theory is not in Korean. So you should not just neglect one subject absolutely because you expect the other. Everything is correlated. So this book has good matters and good ways and good ways and good theory on the matters of practice.
단계적으로 차근차근 해 나가는 것이 있는지 자체도 몰랐단 말이에요. 이게 굉장히 심각한 문제가 되어 있는 거예요. 그러므로 그 내용을 따라서 수행 차제라고 수습 차제, 수행 차제, 수행을 하는데 차근차근 차례대로 해 나가는 방법이라고 이제 그 껌님 빠르빠 그러면 수행 차제 이렇게 부르게 됐다 그런 얘기예요.
Just like the title suggests, stages of practice, this book emphasizes on the stages of practice.
길이 어떤 것인지에 대해서 쌀 알갱이가 여기저기 흩어져 있는 것처럼 어지러운 것이 아니라 적절한 순서를 가지고 설명하고 있습니다. 그러니까 여기에
This book describes the means of practice in a very
마음을 어떻게 다스릴 것인가에 관한 집중된 논문이다. 마음을 어떻게 우리가 다스릴 것인가.
in a very consecutive order. It does not just explain the means in a way that just the way the rice are scattered around.
핵심의 내용이 핵심 모티브가 지관이란 말이야. 사마타와 비파사나에 관한
The main motive behind this practice are the samatha and vipassana.
다시 한번 결론적으로 말씀을 드리면 이거는
So
지관에 관한 내용이다. 그러니까
this book is about vipassana and samatha.
다루게 될 것이다. 그런 얘기예요. 그러니까 이거는 또 이제 뭐 우리가 알맹이가 여기저기 흩어져 있는 것처럼 어지러운 것이 아니라 그냥 이거는 번역이 조금 그 애매한데 알맹이가 흩어져 있는 것이 아니고 이제 그것도 얘기가 되겠지만은
So the translation here is done a little weird, but just like the rice is scattered around. If you have some rice on the table and if you give it a little shake, and because the shape of the rice is a little oval, if you shake it, then you cannot really predict with what shape the rice will stand. If you write like rice, we call this in Chinese letter mi. This also means you don't know where that will lead to in a way. Just like that, if you do not have just like that, this book is not written in a way that you cannot make out. But with what Kamlashila achieved and also based on Buddha's teaching, this book is written in a very consecutive order.
부분에 해당합니다. 그러니까 이게 이제 그 여러분 앞에 그 꽃님 바르파 그런 그 중편 그려놨죠, 그죠? 수행 차제 중편.
If you look at the title, it's written Stages of Practice Mid-Level. So there is previous level, there's like a first level, and there is also conclusion. And the first level is concentrates on basically on conditions in which you have to practice asceticism. And in the mid-level that we are concentrating right now is mostly on vipassana and samatha.
이게 뭐냐면 이 대승불교에서 가장 존경스러운 부처님 이름을 빼버리고 존칭어가 있어요. 존칭어가.
There is a respectable way of referring to.
이때 당시에는 전교사다. 그 뭐냐면 이 가르침을 전달해주는 사람이다.
Referring to those who convey Buddha's teachings, it's a very respectable way. But during this time, we call them something like a missionary, but not those Christian missionary, but those people who are able to convey the teachings of Buddha.
깨달음의 번뇌를 벗어날 수 있는 길을 열어주는 스승이기 때문에 전교사 그러면 굉장히
because they are those who can open the door for your practice and also end up your suffering. So we call them acharya, and they actually refer to missionary who can open the door for you for the enlightenment. And in Mahayana, we call every one of those bodhisattva. So the conveyor Kamlashila, the missionary Kamlashila, first taught this text in Hindi. In Sanskrit, the previous language that the actual language that those people in Buddha's era spoke. Just like Buddha, he spoke in Sanskrit. So in India, most of Mahayana teachings are written in Sanskrit, and they were translated to Chinese, and they were again in Tibetan. But what we have translated was from Chinese. But in the beginning, Kamlashila taught this text in Sanskrit. And this book starts with the Sanskrit name of this book.
여기에는 여러분의 마음속에 이 성스러운 경전 언어에 대한 인연을 심어주는 의도가 담겨 있습니다. 여기에서 지금 요 번역을 하신 분이 이제 요거는 자꾸 경전 그려놨죠, 그죠?
So this person who has translated this book has written this text as scripture, but that's a wrong translation, because this book is not a scripture of Buddha's writing, but this book is actually a book that has been edited again with the Buddha's teaching in mind, with the basis of Buddha's teaching.
기록하고 말씀하신 것은 아마도 부처님께서 말씀하신 그 범어를 그대로 그 인연을 심어주기 위해서 그렇게 하신 것이 아닌가.
This practice is actually
또 이렇게 인도 당시의 언어로
there is the interpretation is done in a way that Gamlashila has written this treatise in order to convey Buddha's thoughts
돌아보면 티베트인들은 다양한
uh,
사회문화적인 요소들을
with the diverse natural aspects of Tibet. They have built different relations with neighboring countries. For example, with India, they have attained religious ideas and culture, and also they brought a lot of scholars from India, their hometown. When you say Tibet, we think it's a small country, but it's a very huge country. If you look at it from modern aspects, because there are so many natural resources like uranium and also copper in Tibet. But the the land itself is very big, but it's harsh. If you say cultural regions of Tibet, then there's a huge Tibetan cultural regions. Even before Buddhism entered Tibet, Tibetans they also took a lot of culture from China. So if you look at their ancient manners of life, then you can see that there is a mixed culture between India and China, but they have been able to derive their own distinctive culture. Tibetans, when they first took Buddhism, then in order to take Buddhism as it is, they learned Sanskrit and they also made the language Tibetan. So if you take Tibetan, using Tibetan, it's so similar that you are able to reconstruct Sanskrit with use of Tibetan. So it's not wrong to say that they have made the Tibetan in order to take Buddhism as it is. So in Tibetan, it's very special that Buddha's teachings are not changed, not altered so much, but it still remains. Just like how the name of the book remains Sanskrit, and Gamlashila was able to teach them in Sanskrit.
이제 역사적인 것은 그런 그 학자들이 그 불교나 또는 범어 그다음에 또 아유르베다
There is like historical background like Sanskrit, Buddhism, and or the Ayurveda. So traditionally, Tibetans call India the land of their teachers. So, but even Koreans, like we say, since it's the land where Buddha was born, and we want to feel or trace down the footsteps of Buddha, we go there for pilgrimage. It does not mean the land itself is holy, but scholar like Buddha was born and he obtained nirvana in India, so we want to go there as for pilgrimage to feel the spirit of Buddhism. Even now, if you go to Namgyal Monastery for teaching and if you eat, then you're quite confused. because the food looks the style of the food cooking is Chinese, but it's not very clear. And also Tibetans, they don't know how to eat vegetable.
뿌리가 한 서너 뿌리밖에 없어. 캐베츠도 그냥 두 개 그냥 이렇게 있는
And they said, when I went to Spirit this time, they told me there are some radish there. So when I tried to look, there were only like three of them, the end far end. So when I ate three of them, there was not left.
순하고 좋더라고. 그래서 그 꿀을 한 통. 나 먹으라고 가져왔어. 그래서 이게 통에 가져왔어. 그 몇 통 더 사자.
But there is a very special honey, like during the time when the flowers blossom, and it was very mild and very good. So I wanted to buy some. So, but they told me they aren't for sale because they cannot produce them.
그래서 이제 이게 티베트 얘기입니다. 야채와 관련한 티베트의 많은 단어들이 중국어와 유사하며
So this is about Tibet, like
그 용어들을 그대로 사용하고 있습니다. 그러니까
a lot of Tibetan words that's for vegetable is very similar to Chinese, and even today they are being used.
라디오, 텔레비전 뭐 영어로 된 게 뭐 그것들 있잖아요, 그죠?
So those words, just like our radio that we use now and televisions,
일본이나 이제 그 미국을 통해서 받아들였기 때문에 일본식 용어도 많고 이제 그 영어식
these words
용어도 이제
we accepted them, or we have been influenced with from Japan and also US. There are so many English words that we use now, and just like us, those parents who took all the vegetables from China, they also pronounce similarly. So even in India, if you see the tea, we call chai in India, but in Chinese it's cha. And just like even in Korean, it's cha, it's same. So even in India, they somewhat has a similar pronunciation. And even the thick clothing for the very severely cold temperature has been influenced from Mongolia. So the like a coat and also the hat that wear is influenced from Mongolia. The color and the style from clothing, a lot of them can be found of Mongolian influence. So even today, Tibet was influenced from different neighboring countries, and they have been able to derive their own originality. This line is spoken in order to explain the origin of different cultures, different diverse cultures, but Tibet was able to derive originality from all the influences. Dalai Lama has spoken this in order to describe the origin of different scriptures and treatises. Some scripts were from India, from Sanskrit, and there are also some from China. And also those scripts written in Sanskrit also somewhat explains that it's also from Naranda University.
제목을 붙이고 있는 것입니다. 이것은 이 논스가 다른 언어에서 티베트로 번역되었다는 뜻이 되죠.
Just like Komuni Prabhupada suggests, this suggests that since this book was actually in Sanskrit, but this book is actually a translated version in Tibetan, since Komuni Prabhupada is also Tibetan. So if we call the name in Sanskrit, that's to show the originality, but just like the name, just like the title suggests, this book is actually a translated version.
그러니까 얼마나
So it's not wrong to say Tibetan was developed in order to uh, translate Buddhism.
우리가 알 수가 있죠.
You're able to notice how much they tried to convey actual Buddhism to us.
구체적인 수행 경제를 표현하는 중요한 언어로서 여러 세기 동안 그 역할을 다 해왔으면 지금도 불교
So Tibetan is important language. Tibetan acts as important language to provide and also to convey the Buddhist ideas. So throughout the world, when you experiment Buddhism, there is a pattern. The first thing is to study Sanskrit. Just like Oxford University and different universities in America, there's when they experiment or when they do research on Buddhism, the first thing they do is understand Sanskrit, and also second one is understand Parsi, and the third one is they do research on Tibetan. And they try to reconstruct the missing parts of Sanskrit letters with use of Tibetan. The fourth one is Chinese. Korean is not included because we do not have a proper understanding of Buddhism. So there's nothing on Buddhist. There's nothing on Buddhist from Korean language. Although we practice Buddhism for thousands of years, we cannot actually say we have done it properly. So people who study Buddhism through languages, they practice those four languages. For us, before Korean was invented, we learned all Buddhism with use of Chinese. So although we say the scriptures are translated to Korean, it's not been many years back that we were able to translate it completely. I don't think we have that ability to translate or understand or comprehend completely Buddha's teaching with use of Korean. So there's a part that you should pay a little more attention. It is also a language that's able to embrace all Mahayana, Hinayana, and also the belief of most excellence, or even the study of Deva.
순수 한글을 가지고서는 그러니까 한문을 섞지 않은 순수 한글을 가지고서는 지금도 대장경 번역이 안 됩니다.
With pure Korean, if you do not mix Chinese to some extent, then you are not able to translate all the sutras, because there are words that there are too many words we do not possess in order to translate those sutras. For like in Tibet, those scholars who studied Buddhism, they invented new words to translate them. So, because of that, Tibetan possess language to embrace all the teachings. So, Tibetan is an important natural heritage or cultural heritage to embrace Buddhism. Okay, Sanskrit is too difficult.
표현하는 것은 굉장히 섬세하게 표현할 수 있는데 좀 어렵다고 이게 티베트는
But you are able to comprehend or elaborate that in a very delicate manner. But Tibetan is not that difficult, but they are able to explain those teachings. So if you listen to Tibetan people speaking, then you can also know that most of them are related to Buddhism.
16년 동안 그렇게 말살시키려고 해도 잘 안 되는 것이 그게 우리 언어 때문에 그래요. 언어와 문자 때문에 그렇단 말이에요. 그게 핵심적으로 그게 잘 깨지질 않아요.
When Japan invaded our country and they have been trying to eradicate our Korean culture for many years, but they couldn't because it's because of our language, Korean. That's why language is important.
그러나 거기서 처음부터 문수 공자께 그렇게 하는 것은 문수 보살님께 배려합니다.
Although is written that they pay a tribute to Manjushri.
그래서 정례라 그러는데 이 말을 땅에 대해서 절을 한다 그래서 정례라 그러는데 이 구절은 번역자의 예경 부분입니다.
They bow to Manjushri.
번역자인 역경사가 아무런 장애 없이 모든 일을 끝낼 수 있기를 바라며 기를 올리는 부분입니다. 그래서 이제
This part is a part where the translator hopes or prays to complete this translation work without much difficulty. So they bow to Manjushri.
정리를 합니다. 예경을 올리는 것은 그 경전의 성격을 말해주는 거예요. 그 문수보살님께
when they first pay homage to certain bodhisattvas, it also explains the characteristics of this sutra.
보통 우리가 자비에 관한 얘기를 할 때는 간세보살께 정리합니다. 이렇게 이제 되어 있어요. 그럼 우리가
So when you are talking about when you want to talk about compassion, then you pay attributes or you pay homage to Avalokitesvara. So when you're talking about those texts which is related to theory and rationalism and also a study or practice, then you usually pay respect to Manjushri.
문수 보살님을 직접 친견하시고 쓰셨다 그 얘기가 뒤에 나온단 말이야. 그렇기 때문에 그 직접 그런 가피를 입으시고
Even to the middle part, it's written that the writer met Manjushri in person and then he started to write the text. So there are a lot of cases when those writers first write with the blessing of Manjushri. And that part, and this line is also in part with the prayer and prayer to Manjushri in order to complete this his hopes or his prayers.
과거의 모든 불교의 법왕들이 공표하신 것처럼 문수보살님께 예경을 올리고 있습니다. 이 구절은
Most of the treatises written pay homage to Manjushri, and also that describes the sutta nature or abhidharma nature of this script. although we say this, although some say these books are sutta, but this book actually belongs to Abhidhamma.
자기 제자에게
Abhidhamma.
귀염 소리 안 한다고. 여기에 그 후세 제자들이
The disciples of Buddha in later, they pay homage to Manjushri, and they also pay homage to Avalokitesvara, and that's all. That all refers to footnotes written on the sutras written by Buddha, and I think that demands a little change. So please remove the line that says it is sutta.
전통적으로 이 번역자의 예경에서 만약 불보살님께 예경을 올리고 있다면 그것은 경장에 속하는 경전이라는 말입니다.
Traditionally, if they pay homage to this Buddhist bodhisattva, then it refers that this book is the script is actually sutta, but
경전을 경전 주석을 할 때 그렇게 불보살님께 기합니다. 이렇게 이제 합니다. 요거는 논설을 썼기
when
때문에
they usually pay homage to Buddhist bodhisattva when they work on the footnote of sutta, but this book isn't. So
예경에서 만약 올리겠다면 경장에
traditionally, through these interpreters or translators' work,
의미입니다. 그렇게 여기서는 이렇게 얘기하고 자꾸 앞에서는 이 경이 그려놨잖아요, 그죠? 이건 경이 아니고 논장이라는 것을 우리가
refers that this script is actually Abhidhamma.
논장에 속한 것이라면
But it's quite although here it says it's Abhidhamma, they kept saying sutras in the previous pages. But the thing is,
부처님께서 쓰라는 것이고
when you say Tripikata, like Vinaya and Sutta and Abhidhamma, Vinaya is actually all work of Buddha.
완전히 논일 때는 보살님께 기합니다. 논의 성격에 따라서 문수보살이냐 간접보살이냐
When it's completely Abhidhamma, we pay homage to Bodhisattva. But when it's also a Sutta, you pay homage to
내용도 모르고
Buddhist bodhisattvas.
정확지 않고 분별도 정확지 않으면서 뭘 쓴다고 막 앞에서 이제 주저리 요즘에는 책들을 갖다가 쓸데없는 책들을 갖다 많이 쓰는 경우가 많죠.
But a lot of people, without those kind of proper understanding, they try to write a lot of different books.
전통적인 방식 중에 하나입니다. 다 이제 전통이 이렇게 해서 쭉
So likewise, this work of translator is very traditional, and this is a tradition that has been derived from the time of Buddha.
요 논서의 핵심 부분을 말씀을 하신 거예요. 이 논서의 핵심 것이 뭐냐면 지와간이다. 사마타 비파사나다. 사마타 비파사나.
And this is the part where they talk about the essence of this book, which is vipassana and samatha.
무아에 관한 것이다. 그 무아를 갖다가 지금 그러니까 사마타를 이루어서 무아가 되는 그 내용을 갖다 지금 거기에 들어가는 방법을 갖다 전부 다 가르칠 것이기 때문에 대단히 중요한 내용이다.
Also, they teach us the way to enter absence of ego through samatha.
장에 속한다는 말입니다. 대승경전의 체계를 따라
In order to achieve that, they pay homage to Manjushri, and that's the part where it belongs to Abhidhamma.
부분입니다. 그렇다면 대승의 가르침을 수행하는 궁극적인 목적은 무엇입니까? 그러니까 하는 것입니다.
What is the motive for practicing Mahayana? The answer is nature of Buddha. What is the nature of Buddha in order to become Buddha? The beginning of your heart, the beginning of having sense in you in order to become Buddha is called the nature of Buddha.
한국 사람이 번역한 것이기 때문에 불성이라는 것이 뭐가 하나 있어서 그것을 갖다가 우리가 발견하면 되는 것처럼 그렇게 생각해서는 안 됩니다. 그건 내가
You should not take it in the way that, like last time I explained to you, you should not take it the way that there is inherent Buddha in you. The final goal of studying Mahayana is to become Buddha. And the essence is the essence is compassion and the aspiration for Buddhahood.
따라서 깨달음을 이룰 수 있는 적절한 방법들을 구체적으로 탐구해 나가야 합니다. 이것이 수행입니다. 이 수행을 통해서
So you should have a clear idea and understanding of ways to attain Buddhahood. With this, I conclude the introduction of this sutra. With this, you are able to have a little understanding on the personality or characteristics of these sutras. Okay, so let's start with the explication part of this text. There is a line that we follow from the great Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna can also be referred as second Buddha. He is a great person. He's a great man. When you're talking about Mahayana, you cannot neglect the name Nagarjuna. His achievements and his position is great in Mahayana. Although in Korea we only have Jungron that's been introduced from his book, but he's great. There's a line that says, if you want to achieve enlightenment without motive for self and also for the world, then you should have unconventional then you should have unpassing wisdom based on the altruism. So the basis should be your intention in order to save all sentient beings. Efforts to remove all agony of all sentient beings. If you're trying to achieve enlightenment with that enlightenment, then there should be based on a concrete altruism. If altruism is not based, then the reason why we're talking about altruism as basis is because even when you are practicing samatha and vipassana, if you cannot have altruism as basis, then it cannot be achieved, it cannot be done. No matter how much you sit and you practice your asceticism or do meditation, that cannot be done. Sorry. The practice should be based on altruism and compassion that embraces everything. All sentient life is important, and everyone wants happiness, and also you do not want suffering for anyone. You should accept all that, and
이 얘기가 다 된 상태로
You should be able to treat everyone with compassion.
자비심과 이타심
Since Bodhisattva is already spoken, so here the okay, even the compassion arises from altruism. So nothing can be achieved if it's not based on altruism and also compassion.
앞으로도 남들과 자신의 행복을 바라는 이들은 일체 지혜 경지를 이루는 동기를
This moment and even in future, if you want happiness of or other sentient beings, then they should also be able to achieve certain level of intelligence.
어떤 상황을
If you want happiness only to yourself, that you cannot achieve happiness. You cannot achieve happiness despite whatever condition that is provided. Whether the base is, whether the final goal is enlightenment or to become rich, even that's impossible. Although it seems it's possible, it is impossible. It will not be long before you break down.
행복이 더불어서 공고하고 깨지지 않게 하려고 하면
So my happiness and others' happiness should be
이 타심을 되지 않고서는 이 타심을 전제로 하지 않고서는
if you want my happiness and others' happiness as well, then unless altruism is based on the motive, it is not possible.
전제가 되어야 된다. 일체 중생은
Our aspiration for enlightenment is also that should also be based on altruism.
또는 승불할 수 있는 관계도 이루어지지 않는다.
Without that, the sense of bodhisattva will not arise, and also the condition for you to attain enlightenment will not be provided.
대웅전을 하나 짓더라도 일체 여기에 의지해서 수많은 사람이 그 참 진짜 정진해서 공부를 갖다 이루었으면 좋겠다는 그 이타심이 전제가 안 되면 대웅전을 짓는 것마저도 무의미해요. 의미가 하나도 없어요.
If altruism is not basis of your motive, then even if you build a temple, it's not very beneficial.
자비심과 이타심 그리고
Also, the motive for your enlightenment will not be given out.
이타심이나 보리심 그다음에
And it provides basis.
자비심 그건 저기에 존자님께서 하나 꼭
The sense of altruism, bodhisattva, and also compassion.
말하겠네.
And there's also one thing the Dalai Lama has spoken, which is proper opinion or view.
모르는지 무엇이 부족한지 자체를 모르는 사람들 굉장히 위험해. 알려고도 하지도 않고
The most pathetic part is the part where people don't know what is it exactly that they want or what is it exactly that they do not know.
여러분이 며느리를 얻었는데 며느리가 밥을 줄 모른다 그러면 며느리가 아유 제가 밥을 줄 몰랐어요. 어머니 배우겠습니다. 그러면 되거든.
For example, if you have a daughter-in-law and she does not know how to set rice, then it's fine for her to say, "Oh, I am so sorry, I don't know how to set rice, but I will learn." But if, for example, if she doesn't know what is rice, or if she doesn't know why there is a need to learn how to cook rice, and that is a problem that only causes conflict.
말은 아이고 내가 뭘 몰랐어요 그러지만 실제로 뭘
Because there are some who does not know how much is it that they do not know. They think they know everything. So sometimes when they tell me that they do not know, and I ask them what is it that they do not know, then they don't know what is it that they do not know, and that seems very negligent.
같은 작은 그 불빛을 가지고 자기는 안다는 거야. 아는 것도 잘못 알고 있는 게 대다수고, 진짜 반딧불 같은
And
발랄 정도밖에 안 되면서
they claim to know that they do know that they do have understanding, although their idea or their knowledge is as bright as a mere light.
같이 길을 갈 때 어디에 엉구렁이가 있는지 모르는 거와 똑같은 거야. 그냥 뉴스 빠져봅니다. 그러니까 뭘 모르는지 모르기 때문에 배우질 못해. 배우려고 생각도 하죠. 아만이 가득했어. 무지와 아만이라는 것이 아주 가득했어.
Since you do not know what is it that you do not know, you cannot learn.
그 정견이라는 것은 지금 내가 무엇이 잘못된 견해인지 자체를 모르니까 바른 견해가 어떤 것인지를 몰라.
A proper view, because you do not have a proper view that what is right and wrong.
근데 이제
How old are you?
그렇다는 얘기는 아니고 대다수 사람들이 뭐냐면 젊은 애들은 술을 안 먹어야 된다는 것을 잘 몰라. 그 20살만 되면 술을 먹어야 된다는 것만 알아.
A lot of others does not know that you shouldn't drink, but the only thing that they know is that when they attain age of 20, they should start drinking.
그러니까 이게 바른 견해를 갖다 배우는 것은 성인의 말씀 아니고서는 바른 견해가 성립이 안 돼. 왜? 아무리 뭐 스피노자가 얘기를 해놨다 손 치더라도 그걸 가지고서는 아무리 우리가
So if you do not have a proper understanding, then you cannot say what is wrong and right, and without them, you cannot solve the problem of suffering.
아무리 해봤자 자꾸 고통이 그것 때문에 고통이 반복된다 그러면 그건 바른 견해가 될 수 없는 거거든요. 그래서 내가 저번에 옛날에는 자동차에 내가
So-
도 좀 걸어주고 이렇게 하다가 이 자각이 없는 사람들
Before, in olden times, I used to hang even rosary in the car for people. But I do not do that anymore because those people who do not have a proper comprehension, I thought that might act as a poison.
조심하라고 하는 것도 우리나라 사람들이
So,
잘 못 믿어. 왜냐면
the-
조심하라는 것도 그냥 포괄적이라 시장을 나가려면 어떻게 하시려면
The main reason behind is to ask them to be careful, but they do not really understand how to be careful. So once someone came to me and said he wants to be a mayor. So I asked him why, and he said, "Oh, I will just do it well." And they do not have a proper understanding. Like even when you get married, they ask, "So how are you going to do?" And they say they will live well, but or even older people, they are not able to tell them what is a proper and what is a wrong thing, but they just tell them live well, live well.
내용들 다 있잖아.
Even as with driving, you should drive safe, but
빨리 달리지 말아야 되는 거.
even if it's a safe driving, the thing is mentioned every detail for it is mentioned. Like you should not drink and drive. You should you should not drive when you're unhappy. You should be careful, and you should also take it to service center regularly. Everything is mentioned. Everything is part of safe driving.
잘 모르는 사람이 봐도
Once I saw even I'm not very good at cars, but even from my eyes, even from my point of view, the tire looked a little too worn out. It was too shiny, so I told him you should change it, but he said it's fine, and eventually he had an accident. So this is what I tell all the time. Until the point of time that you get an accident, it's fine, but you should be careful before having the accident until the point that you have an accident. If you had already had an accident, that's almost like you fixed your stable after you lose your cow.
그게 괜찮다 이게 사고가 나서 죽을 때까지는 어쨌든 괜찮아. 그
The word it's fine or it's okay, it's okay until the point that you have an accident or until you get sick or until you die. It's fine to drink until you get liver cancer or until you die. But the problem is the fact that you do get liver cancer. Until you get it, it's okay.
괜찮아.
Even smoking is fine. It's fine.
괜찮아.
It's fine until you catch lung cancer.
욕하고 싸우는 것도 괜찮아. 센 놈마저 얻어 터질 때까지.
Even swearing and fighting is fine until you get hit by a strong person.
때까지는 괜찮아. 그래서 수없이 주장을 하지만 바른 견해라는 것이 굉장히
So we
중요해.
say so many times, but a proper view or proper opinion is very important.
견해가 안 서 있으면 생각이 바로 안 서 있으면
If you do not have a proper opinion,
내가 뭐 어디 지금 회사가 그랬다더라? 어디가 삼성인가 어디에서 그랬다? 뭐 사발술인가 뭘 마신다며 폭탄 주고
I heard it once in a company they drink in a bowl.
이거 섞어 가지고 뭘 하여튼 뭐 한 사발 해가지고
They mix this and that and they make it in a very huge bowl and they drink.
차라리 청산가리를 먹여버리지. 빨리 죽어버리지.
It's better to drink poison if you want to die sooner.
그걸 왜 그렇게 슬슬 죽게 만들어? 지 도망갈 피할 회피처만 만들어 놓지.
Why do you
청산가리를
why do you do some acts that leads to slow death?
그래가지고 상대가 교도소로 들어가지. 술을 퍼먹여서 죽인 것은 교도소도 안 들어가.
Instead of drinking for him, but if you take poison, then at least that person will go to prison because he killed you. But if you drink, if he makes you drink and you die, then he will not even go to prison.
사발술을 안 퍼먹이면 네가 이 직장에 못 있고 어쩌고 저쩌고 뭐 네가 상사를
And some say, I didn't want to drink, but I was made to drink.
먹지 말라는 상사를 갖다 웃기게 보가니.
But those people around you, they will not look for someone. They will not think that person who made you drink is weird just because it makes your life at work miserable. But it's your fault who drank.
엄주 측정을 해가지고 아예 차를 갖다 운전석으로 못 오르게끔.
If I'm a police, I will make the police stand in front of the restaurants that serves alcohol so that they cannot even go near cars. If I have to be hidden by the owners of restaurant, I shall.
교통사고 나서 남을 죽이고 죽을 죽여버리는데 죽이고 돈 벌려고 그게 앉았어?
So it's wrong. You don't know what it might lead to. Like you drink and your act of selling alcohol for the person might lead to accident and he might die.
그래서 이게
So
자비심과 이타심 그리고 정견
this thing called altruism and also compassion
기본 밑바탕이다 이게. 그러니까 경전을 배우지 않고
is the basis for understanding. So if you do not study scripts and if you want to have understanding, that's impossible.
부처님의 가르침인
Having a
그것도
proper
가능합니다.
understanding
그러니까
is
부처님의 가르침을
believing and also staying close to
이해하려고
Buddha's
본문을
teaching.
듣고
So you should always try to understand and
가까이
also
듣고
try to
외우고
believe Buddha's
그분
teachings.
듣고 실천하려고 그러고 하라는 뜻 아닙니까?
Being close means read often and do practice often and always try to endure Buddha's teachings.
부처님의 가르침에 대한 내용을 잘 살펴보고 그 의미를 잘 이해해야 합니다. 그 이해하는 것이 중요해요.
You should have a proper understanding and also proper comprehension of Buddha's teachings if you want to live a fruitful life.
가능한 모든 기회를 활용하여 미래에 후회할 일을
If
만들지
possible, use all chances and in order not to have a futile life, but
내가 살았을
you
때
should
이 바른 견해가 있으면 이와 같이 살았을 때 뒤에
you should try to have a proper view of yourself. Now, sometimes some people think that my child might leave me. That is also an opinion that's made by you, but it's not something that someone else made for you. If you fear that someone might betray you because of this act, then you should not live your life in that way.
60년 뒤에 올 불행을 지금 계속 알거나 모르거나 알면서도 계속 반복하거나 모르면서 계속 반복해서
If you know
그런 불행이
If you know what suffering that will come to you after 30 or 50 years, and even if you do not know what will come to you after 30 or 50 years, if you have that kind of understanding, then you should not practice that act.
부처 말씀을 배우면서 이제 이런 것들을 갖다 우리가 잘 깊이 있게 이해를 해야만이
While learning Buddha's teachings, we should have a proper understanding of all this. Practicing or putting into act is a different thing, but at least we should have a proper understanding. If possible, use all chances and do not make circumstances that makes you miserable. The four sects of Tibetan Buddhism, among them Gelug sect is a sect that Dalai Lama is. Kadampa is a new sect that arrives after 11th century. Okay. Atisha is a great scholar. After him, Van Tsongkhapa.
그 종각파 스님이 계셨고 대사가 문을 연 겔룩파의 전신이기도 하다. 그에서
Open the door to Gelugpa. At the time of our, similar to our Joseon dynasty, in this part when they talk about Geshe, Geshe also refers to those studied all Tripikata. It's a little different from our doctor that we talk about nowadays. Normally when we say Geshe, Geshis are those who have a proper understanding of Vinaya, Sutta, and Abhidhamma, or Tripikata. Koral Sangpo has left important message and also important influence on people. Let's read together. The act of teaching and learning is proper when it is beneficial to herd. Well-kept behavior and maintain organized behavior is a proof that you have been taught well. Agony and delusion is a proof is a footprint that the ascetic practice has regressed. We call him ascetic when he understands this truth.
우리가 이제 무엇을 갖다 그 내가 여러분에게 무엇을 가르친다라고 했을 때
Like if I say I am teaching you something,
여러분이 누구한테서
or
무엇을 배운다라고 했을 때
when you are learning something,
선한 마음과 여러분이 번뇌를 벗어나는 마음에
your
도움이
pure
되는
heart
것이
and your
갖다 바른 것이라 그런단 말이에요.
we say it's proper when it's pure to your heart and also when your heart is able to escape from agony. But let's say if Mr. Antarsu came or if some other politician came and if you want to go and see him just because he came all the way here, it has got nothing to do with your agony.
인기 좋다네 책도 인기 좋고 뭐 그렇다네 해가지고 책이라는 게 보니까 텔레비에 나오고 책 나온 거 보니까 스님 저는요 딸이 시집을 가는데
If some writer came and
남자한테 공무원인데
just because his book is famous,
그게 뭐
and some of you come and ask, do you think my daughter is getting married? Do you think it's okay for my daughter to get married to him?
표피적이고 자기 욕망적인 얘기들만 쭉 그런 것은 바른 것이라고 하질 않아.
That's very sentimental and that's got everything to do with your greed. We don't say that's proper.
만약에 어떤 사람이
It does not help you anything in any ways for you to become kinder and more compassionate.
그것은 여러분의 번뇌를 갖다 줄이는
Just because with
그 번뇌를 갖다가 더 강하게 강화시켜주는 것이기 때문에
those kind of speeches only enhances your agony, but it does not remove any of your agony. So we do not say they are proper. When we say scholars and when we say proper, we mean we do not mean those which enhances agony in your heart, but we mean those which reduces those agony from your heart. So in this world, if you teach something that is proper, if for example, if you want it's good for your child to eat vegetable, but if you want to give them vegetable, you're not able to take the word as they are, but you say something irrelevant, and then you say you don't want to come to temple anymore. When you say it's proper to heart or when it's beneficial to heart, you should not misunderstand here too. When you say it's beneficial, we mean to say when your heart is processing or progressing in a passionate way, in a compassionate way. When you say beneficial, when you say beneficial, you take it like, oh, for me, the beneficial thing is my child passing the test. Or else, like if I tell you to live properly, how can that help me with my daily life? It all does, eventually. A well-maintained and well-organized behavior is a proof that you have been well taught. If you are praying well in order to change your heart,
남에게 이익된 행을 하려고 하고
And
있고,
also you're contributing to others, you're speaking in a proper manner.
속으로 살아가는 것은 그 사람이 지금 공부를
This
하고
kind
있다는
of
스스로부터 법문을 들어서 지금
proper
잘
behavior
실행을 하고 있다.
is a proof that you are studying.
못 알아듣는 사람은 업이 워낙 중요한 사람은 부패를 한뭐 1년쯤 다녀도
And also those people who is well loved by agony of life, or also good virtues or bad virtues, they even if no matter how hard they try, eventually they distance themselves from all the teachings. Even if they come to Sakchonsa for 1 year for all the teachings, they are not able to quit drinking. Why can't you stop drinking? Some answer is delicious. Look at him answering.
그게 바른 견해가 딱 섰을 때는 이게 아니고 하면
So all this,
그러면 이제
if you have a proper understanding
선한 모습
or proper idea, everything will stop.
여유가 생기고
Then gradually you change to your good nature, and you will have more. You will have a better behavior of working for others' happiness. When you say delusion and agony from arising,
일어난다 이런 것은 무슨 뜻이냐? 지금 본인
If-
수행에 태보가
if-
있다는 뜻이야.
if you have delusion and agony keep arising, even if you're studying hard or being taught by a teacher, it means your ascetic practice is going backwards, it's not progressing.
그런 것을 수행자라 그런다. 자,
We call them ascetic practicer. Let's end here.